Singapore just shocked the world with what it said about Filipinos. And it's not what you think. In a nation known for efficiency, wealth, and power, Filipinos are no longer seen as just workers. They're being called the very backbone of industries Singapore cannot survive without. But why now, in 2025, is Singapore making this admission? And what does it mean for millions of Filipinos building lives abroad? Stay with me because the truth will surprise you. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. When people think of Singapore, they imagine skyscrapers piercing the clouds, spotless streets, and a city-state that runs like clockwork. But behind that reputation of order and progress lies a truth few outside Southeast Asia ever acknowledge. Filipinos are deeply woven into Singapore's success story. In fact, their presence is so significant that Singapore itself has now openly admitted just how much it depends on Filipino workers, caregivers, and professionals. The Filipino footprint in Singapore stretches back decades. In the 1970s and 1980s, the first wave of Filipinos began arriving, mostly as domestic workers, caregivers, and service staff. For many, Singapore was a stepping stone, a place to earn better wages than at home, with the dream of sending money back to their families in the Philippines. But as the years passed, something shifted. Singapore's economy boomed, transforming from a struggling port nation into one of the richest countries in the world. And with that growth came labor shortages in key industries: healthcare, hospitality, IT, finance, and education. Who stepped up to fill those gaps? Filipinos. Fast forward to today, 2025, and the numbers tell the story. According to Singapore's Ministry of Manpower, there are now over 200,000 Filipinos living and working in Singapore, making them one of the largest migrant communities in the city. That's a staggering figure when you consider Singapore's total population is only about 5.9 million. But simply, Filipinos are not a small minority in Singapore. They are a vital part of the population that keeps the economy running. But here's the twist. While many outsiders still think of Filipinos in Singapore as domestic helpers, the reality has evolved. Filipinos are everywhere. In hospitals across Singapore, you'll find Filipino nurses providing care in critical wards. In construction sites, Filipinos are building the infrastructure that powers Singapore's future. In IT firms and financial institutions, Filipinos are managing projects, running teams, and contributing to one of Asia's most competitive economies. And in Singaporean homes, Filipinos continue to provide childcare and elder care services so essential that some Singaporean families openly admit they couldn't function without them. Then the deeper story emerges. Singapore is a society obsessed with efficiency and results. It does not hand out praise lightly. Yet employers across industries repeatedly highlight Filipinos as one of the most dependable groups in the workforce. Why? Because Filipinos bring something that can't be measured only in productivity. They bring heart. A Singaporean parent will tell you how their Filipino nanny raised their children like her own. A patient in a hospital will say their Filipino nurse not only gave them medicine, but also gave them comfort. A tech manager will admit that his Filipino team members bring not just skills, but also collaboration and adaptability, qualities essential in a high-pressure environment. But there's another layer: education. Filipinos enter Singapore's workforce not only with technical skills, but with strong English proficiency. In a country where English is the official language of business, this gives Filipinos a huge advantage. Singaporean employers don't need to worry about communication barriers. Instead, they see Filipinos as a seamless fit into their multicultural society. That's why when Singapore needed to scale up its service and professional workforce in the 2000s and 2010s, recruitment agencies increasingly turned to the Philippines. And yet, this recognition didn't come without sacrifices. For every Filipino working in Singapore, there's often a family back home waiting. Children growing up with parents overseas, couples separated for years, parents missing graduations, birthdays, and milestones, all for the sake of sending money home. Remittances from Filipinos in Singapore now contribute billions of pesos annually to the Philippine economy. It's money that builds houses, pays for college tuition, and keeps families afloat. But behind every dollar remitted is a story of personal sacrifice. Then again, these sacrifices also pave the way for Filipino communities to flourish inside Singapore. Today, Singapore has vibrant Filipino networks, churches where Tagalog hymns are sung every Sunday, associations that celebrate Philippine Independence Day with fiestas, and community groups that provide support for newcomers adjusting to the fast-paced city life. In Lucky Plaza, a shopping mall that has become almost synonymous with Filipinos in Singapore, you'll find thousands of Filipinos every Sunday connecting, eating, laughing, and momentarily feeling at home. What once started as a quiet trickle of migrants has now become a full-fledged cultural presence. But here's what makes 2025 so different. For the first time, Singapore isn't just quietly relying on Filipinos. It's openly acknowledging their role. Officials have begun pointing out that without Filipinos, entire sectors, especially elder care and household management, would grind to a halt. This admission is powerful because it shows a shift in how the nation sees Filipinos. No longer invisible, no longer simply workers in the background. Instead, they are recognized as contributors to Singapore's ongoing success story. Still, recognition abroad also highlights a painful truth at home. The more Filipino Singapore recruits, the fewer professionals remain in the Philippines itself. Hospitals back home face nurse shortages, schools struggle to keep teachers, and construction companies lose experienced workers to higher-paying Singaporean firms. It's a cycle of global demand versus local shortage. And it raises a big question. How will the Philippines balance supporting its diaspora while also building its own economy? That's a dilemma we'll dig deeper into later. For now, let's pause and acknowledge this. Singapore, one of the wealthiest and most efficient countries in the world, has said out loud what many others hesitate to admit. Filipinos are not just part of the workforce, they are the hidden gears turning the machine. Without them, daily life in Singapore would look very different. If you agree that Filipinos deserve more than just gratitude for their sacrifices, if you believe they deserve true respect, drop that word in the comments right now. We've traced how Filipinos became embedded in Singapore's success from humble beginnings to today's indispensable workforce. But here's the cliffhanger. In 2025, Singapore made an admission that goes far beyond praise. It's a bold statement about dependence, security, and the future of its own nation. In segment 2, we'll uncover what exactly Singapore confessed, why it's creating new opportunities for Filipinos, and how this shift could change the destiny of both nations forever. By 2025, Singapore had no choice but to say the quiet part out loud. Without Filipino workers, our society would not function the way it does today. Those are strong words coming from a country that prides itself on independence, efficiency, and self-sufficiency, but the truth is undeniable. Filipinos are no longer just a helping hand in Singapore. They are the foundation that holds key parts of the nation together. Let's look at where this confession came from. Singapore has been battling two unstoppable forces, an aging population and a shrinking local workforce. As of 2025, almost 20% of Singaporeans are over 65, and the number is rising fast. The birth rate, meanwhile, has collapsed to one of the lowest in the world at just 1.05 births per woman. That means fewer young people entering the workforce, fewer citizens to take care of the elderly, and fewer hands to keep industries running. To survive, Singapore relies on migrant labor, and Filipinos are at the center of that survival. But here's the kicker. Singapore didn't just quietly expand its hiring of Filipinos in healthcare, domestic services, and IT. Officials started saying it openly. During a manpower strategy meeting in 2025, a senior Singaporean policymaker admitted, Filipino workers are among the most dependable and skilled migrants we have. Without them, aged care facilities, hospitals, and many households would face collapse. For a government known for its careful language, that kind of statement is monumental. If you believe Filipinos deserve not just gratitude but respect in every country they serve, type that word loud and proud in the comments. Now, this recognition isn't just words, it's changing policy. Singapore has introduced new visa frameworks that make it easier for Filipinos to renew contracts, bring family members, and even transition to permanent residency. Recruitment agencies in Manila and Cebu are reporting record demand from Singaporean employers in 2025. Nurses, caregivers, teachers, IT professionals, and skilled service workers are all being fast-tracked. For the first time, Singapore isn't just looking at Filipinos as temporary workers. It's beginning to see them as long-term partners in building the nation. Take the story of Rowena, a caregiver from Pampanga. She came to Singapore in 2016, leaving behind her 3 young children to work for a Singaporean family. At first, it was heartbreaking. She missed birthdays, graduations, and family milestones, but over the years, her employers grew to see her as family. When the Singapore government announced new policies in 2025 to allow certain caregivers to apply for longer stays and family reunification, Rowena's story became a symbol. She wasn't just a migrant worker anymore. She was a bridge between two cultures, raising Singaporean children while still supporting her own family back home. Her sacrifice is now being honored in ways she never expected. But let's not romanticize it too much. Filipino workers in Singapore still face challenges. Many domestic helpers live under strict rules, sometimes with limited days off. Professionals often face barriers when their Philippine degrees aren't fully recognized. And the cost of living in Singapore, one of the most expensive cities in the world, makes saving money a constant struggle. But then, Singapore's confession in 2025 represents a shift. By publicly acknowledging the value of Filipinos, the government is under pressure to improve their conditions. Advocacy groups are louder, communities are stronger, and policies are slowly bending toward fairness. Now, why Filipinos? Why does Singapore single them out in this way? It comes down to qualities that go beyond technical skill. Singaporean employers consistently highlight Filipinos' adaptability, English fluency, and cultural compatibility. But what stands out most is care. Whether it's in a hospital ward, an IT office, or a Singaporean household, Filipinos bring compassion and warmth that money cannot buy. That emotional intelligence sets them apart in a society that can sometimes feel cold and transactional. But there's a bigger angle here. Singapore's admission exposes a hard truth about the global order. Developed countries may be wealthy, but without the labor of nations like the Philippines, their systems can't survive. This is where the Filipino community becomes not just a workforce, but a lifeline. Singapore saying it out loud forces other countries to confront the same reality. If Singapore, the perfect machine, depends this much on Filipinos, then who does? Comment visible if you agree that Filipinos should no longer be the invisible backbone of nations, but the recognized faces of progress. The confession also highlights a cultural shift. For years, Filipinos in Singapore were seen primarily as helpers. Today, they're also bankers, teachers, engineers, artists, and entrepreneurs. Filipino restaurants thrive in places like Orchard Road. Filipino bands play in Clarke Quay. Filipino teachers are raising the next generation of Singaporeans. Slowly, the stereotype is breaking, replaced by a more complete picture. Filipinos as multidimensional, highly skilled contributors. And Singaporeans are noticing. Surveys show that Filipino workers are among the most trusted and well-integrated migrant communities in the city-state. Local families often maintain lifelong relationships with their Filipino employees even after contracts end. Some even visit the Philippines to attend weddings, birthdays, or fiestas, continuing bonds across borders. That level of cultural integration is rare in Singapore's fast-moving society, and it proves just how deeply Filipinos have earned respect. But again, there's a flip side. The more Singapore embraces Filipinos, the more the Philippines loses. Hospitals in Quezon City report struggling to keep nurses. Philippine schools lose teachers to Singaporean classrooms. Families are separated for years at a time. The global demand for Filipinos brings pride, but also pain. And yet, here's the opportunity. Singapore's confession in 2025 could be the spark for a new era. If the Philippines doubles down on education and training, it could produce workers who not only fill Singapore's needs, but also rise as leaders in global industries. Imagine Filipino managers running Singaporean companies, Filipino researchers leading labs, Filipino entrepreneurs scaling businesses across Southeast Asia. That's not far-fetched. It's already happening in small but powerful ways. Drop the word leaders if you believe Filipinos should no longer just follow the system, but run it. So what does Singapore's admission ultimately mean? It means the nation that is often seen as the strictest, most efficient country in Asia is willing to admit it cannot function without the Filipino community. That's more than a compliment. It's a recognition of power. And that recognition should give Filipinos everywhere a sense of pride, but also a sense of responsibility, because when the world starts saying out loud that they need you, the next step is deciding how to use that influence. Type visible if you believe Filipinos in Singapore and across the world should no longer be hidden in the background, but fully seen for the giants they are. We've seen how Singapore's confession is reshaping policies, communities, and perceptions in 2025. But here's the cliffhanger. What does this mean for the Philippines itself? If Singapore admits it can't survive without Filipinos, will the Philippines finally realize the power of its own people? In segment 3, we'll zoom out to the global picture, how Singapore's statement is part of a bigger pattern, and what it means for the future of Filipinos worldwide. Singapore's admission in 2025 isn't just about one city-state. It's a symbol of something much bigger. When a country as powerful, efficient, and disciplined as Singapore finally says out loud, "We cannot thrive without Filipinos," it sends ripples across the globe. It forces the world to recognize what Filipinos have always known, that their sacrifices are not just helping families, but keeping entire nations alive. And let's start with the raw numbers. There are now more than 12 million Filipinos living overseas, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. That's nearly 1 in every 10 Filipinos. Their remittances reached a staggering $38,300,000,000 in 2024, making the Philippines the 4th largest remittance receiver in the world. These numbers are not small change. They keep the Philippine economy afloat. But here's the deeper truth. That $38 billion isn't just about money. It represents the labor, tears, and resilience of millions of OFWs who spend years away from their families. Every dollar is a story. A father missing his daughter's wedding, a mother caring for another family's children while her own grow up without her, a young nurse working night shifts in Singapore while her parents back in the Philippines grow old without her there. If you believe those sacrifices deserve global recognition, type honor in the comments. Now, here's where Singapore's statement matters. For decades, Filipinos abroad were often invisible. They were the nanny in the background, the caregiver behind the curtain, the construction worker nobody talked about. But when Singapore admits it cannot function without Filipinos, the world is forced to see them not as invisible hands, but as visible pillars. That visibility changes everything. It shifts power, perception, and possibility. But here's the challenge. This global demand for Filipinos is creating a painful imbalance at home. Hospitals in the Philippines report chronic staff shortages because so many nurses leave for Singapore, the UK, or the Middle East. Schools lose teachers to higher paying posts abroad. Even IT companies in Manila complain about talent leakage as skilled programmers move to Singapore's tech sector. While Filipinos gain recognition abroad, the homeland struggles to keep up. This is the paradox of success. The more the world needs Filipinos, the harder it becomes for the Philippines to retain them. Then comes the opportunity. Instead of resisting this demand, the Philippines could turn it into a long-term strategy. Imagine if the government doubled its investment in training, education, and certification programs tailored for global industries. Nursing schools producing graduates not just for local hospitals, but for international careers. Tech hubs grooming Filipino programmers to lead in AI, cybersecurity, and fintech. Vocational schools preparing workers for construction, maritime, and engineering opportunities abroad, while also ensuring pathways for them to return and contribute at home. If Singapore's admission teaches us anything, it's that Filipinos are not just workers. They are a global brand of excellence. And like any brand, it must be cultivated, scaled, and protected. Drop the word future if you believe the Philippines should invest in turning its overseas workers into global leaders. But let's not forget the emotional side. Singapore's confession is also personal. It validates the years of struggle endured by millions of Filipinos. It tells every overseas worker that they are not forgotten, that their role is not small, and that their worth is not limited to the money they send home. That recognition heals wounds, but it also raises expectations. If Singapore can openly respect Filipinos, why not every other country that depends on them? Why not Saudi Arabia, where hundreds of thousands of Filipinos keep industries alive? Why not Japan, which recruits Filipino caregivers for its elderly? Why not the US, where Filipino nurses are the backbone of hospitals? But here's the sting. Recognition abroad does not erase the problems Filipinos face. Many still work long hours for low pay, live in cramped quarters, or endure discrimination. Some face abuse or exploitation, especially in domestic work. These issues don't disappear just because Singapore admitted dependence. In fact, the confession makes it clearer, if countries need Filipinos this much, they must also protect and uplift them. Respect isn't just words. It must show up in policies, protections, and fair treatment. Then the bigger question hits. If the world needs Filipinos so badly, what does the Philippines itself think of its own people? Too often, workers are celebrated as heroes only when their remittances arrive, but not when they return home with broken bodies, empty savings, or children who barely know them. Singapore's confession should be a mirror for the Philippines to look into. The country must ask, are we giving our own people the same respect that foreigners are now admitting they deserve? Type respect if you agree that it's not enough for other nations to honor Filipinos. The Philippines itself must step up. So what does all this mean for the future? It means Filipinos are standing at a historic crossroads. On one path, they remain the world's quiet workforce, celebrated abroad, but overlooked at home. On the other path, they rise as global leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, and decision makers. Singapore's confession is a signal that the second path is possible. It proves that Filipinos have the skills, resilience, and heart that the world cannot replace. The only question is whether Filipinos and the Philippine government will seize the moment. But then comes the ultimate twist. This is not just about economics, it's about identity. For too long, Filipinos have been defined by their labor. But in 2025, the narrative is shifting. They are no longer just helpers or workers. They are architects of societies, lifelines of nations, and builders of futures. If Singapore, a country admired worldwide for its strength, can admit this, then the whole world must follow. Comment pride if you believe Filipinos should not only be seen as workers, but as partners shaping the destiny of nations. Singapore's shocking words in 2025 were not just a confession, they were a revelation. A wealthy, disciplined, and powerful nation admitted it cannot survive without Filipinos. That truth forces the world to see Filipinos differently, as essential, visible, and irreplaceable. But it also forces the Philippines to rethink how it values its own people. Will the country continue exporting talent without building strength at home? Or will it harness this global demand to rise as a true leader in the 21st century? The world is saying it out loud. We need Filipinos. The only question left is, will the Philippines believe it too?